Hey, YouTube people. Um, I'm another leftist in the United States, and I kind of wanted to get something off my chest about the state of the left in the United States. Um, and kind of this like Breadtube sphere, how we're like kind of entering this era where Republicans have control again, and a lot of Americans on the left are kind of feeling bereft, feeling hopeless. And without getting too sectarian or um, marginal in theory, I just wanted to say that I think there's some grievances I've had, and I think a lot of other people have had in the past 10 years of organizing that maybe it's time to address. You might call this my State of the Left 2025. And I also don't want to disparage any movements that are ongoing or any groups that have activity that they're doing. I don't want to make it seem like I'm kind of playing backseat driver to what's actually happening. But what I do want to say is that I think a lot of extremely online people who could be doing a lot of great things in the world are stuck watching Breadtube content and absorbing this idea that we can just kind of get the right candidates in to win. And I'm just kind of tired of that narrative, because here we are. It's like if you're over the age of 18, if you're in your 30s like me, you're probably in your like fourth election, fifth, sixth election cycle. This is probably, presidential election cycle in your life. We keep hearing about how the Democrats, we need to put all of our energy into voting for Democrats. And once again, I'm not here to chastise how you vote. But what I'm trying to say is that I feel like this narrative has developed that the only way for the left to have any hope of its goals being achieved is to put energy and effort into electing Democrats. And I just think that that's a little bit bogus. I think there's other things going on. And recently I watched a video from Adam Conover where he talked about the secret reason why the Dems keep losing. And in that, he talked about the idea that membership organizations have been on the decline. Unions have been on the decline. Membership in churches have been on the decline. In essence, the bottom line is that corporate structures have sort of been remodeled inside of the parties such that these are no longer membership organizations themselves. You don't become a member of the Democratic Party. You become a registered Democrat via voting for them. And the only way to really get involved is either to dive headfirst into Democratic organizing and knocking doors, or you have to donate. And a lot of people think that this is sort of like why the left is failing, because we're not building community around our ideas. We're not getting what we want out of the Democratic Party. And I want to talk about this more through the course of this channel. This is really just the opening salvo of my channel. But I wanted to talk about the idea that we are being convinced not to put any effort behind other membership organizations or other parties, because we are being told year over year, election cycle over election cycle, that the only way for us to move forward is to try to somehow transform the Democratic Party. And what I wanted to say is that I think that that's a bit of a pipe dream. Now, I think it's a little bit selfish of me to say that I think a better world with multiple parties is achievable when we haven't seen that. And then, look at the Democratic Party and say it's impossible to transform this when we've had FDR. I understand that there's contradictions in that logic. But I stand by it because I think that the Democratic Party has fully transformed from anything it could have ever been under FDR. And we've had McCarthyism, which essentially destroyed socialist organizing in the United States. And since then, we've had this sort of other McCarthyite type of push to get rid of unions in general. And so I really don't, at the end of the day, I'm just sitting here kind of thinking, how do we think that we can transform a party that is controlled from the top down, that is controlled by its most wealthy benefactors? How is that going to become a working class party? I mean, we know for a fact that the like I said, I'm left. I'm not leaving the left. Trump is abhorrent. I don't believe we should work with him. I think anybody who thinks we should work with Donald Trump is bordering, if not already becoming, a fascist collaborator. That being said, there's something to be said about how the anger was harnessed, and I just don't see the Democratic Party of today being willing to kind of eschew the decorum of the past or eschew the professionalism of the Democratic Party. They're not going to throw that away for us. In essence, they're not courting our votes. They are going to court the centrists that left they're going to court the centrists that left the Republican Party. They're going to court the people who might have been voting for them before Reagan came along, kind of people. They're not looking for leftist votes. And that's kind of where I'm at right now, is just thinking we can do all we want to try to elect Democrats who have a left-leaning stance. We can get AOCs. We can get Rashida Tlaibs. We can do all of this, but they are marginal in the party. AOC wasn't able to join any, she tried to get on some committees. That's the thing is, I'm not even going to honor this conversation with knowing what committee she was trying to get onto, because I'm trying more and more to kind of pull back from knowing about what's going on in in either party, because it's so disconnected from our lives. It's so disconnected from what we do day in, day out. So I don't really see any future with either party. And that's where we're at, is like, well, there's a lot of people in the country right now who think there should be a third party. Now, I know there's a lot of difference over what that party would look like. I'm sure there's people out there that are to the right of Republicans who would love a libertarian party or something like that. But no, what I'm saying is like a working class party, a membership-based working class party that brings people together around a sense of community and doesn't just have them as passive actors. Now, like I said, I'm not trying to disparage anybody else on Breadtube necessarily. I think that Majority Report does good work. They bring people on who talk about the issues, and they don't just offer some piecemeal solution or say like, oh, America. They don't have the vibes of like John Oliver's Last Week Tonight, where it's like, okay, all these problems are separate. Like, Majority Report will tell you that these are all part and parcel problems of capital. Like, they will tell you that. But on the flip side, they're also fucking having Pramila Jayapal on talking about how like we just need to have the right candidates in for 2026. And for me, that's just frustrating because like fascism is right around the corner, right? We have a literal fascist about to enter the White House after 4 years of, this slow moving administration that, we voted for the Democrats in 2020. We voted for Joe Biden because he was willing to call out Trump as a fascist. I know this has been rehashed a million times, but basically the point is that the Democrats have now normalized a guy who wants to have an authoritarian regime in the United States. And so you can't go back on that. You can't just be like, oh, well, we did the best we can. We just gotta, no, once you've normalized that, who knows how this country is going to be in 4 years from now. That's where we're at. And so I don't know. I have to get this off my chest. And it's part of why I'm actually just starting this channel, is because I kind of want to look at issues that are a little bit more of a pipe dream. I kind of wanted to dream a little bit with you and figure out, what could we talk about to, it may seem far off, but like it's aspirational. And I think it's part of why I was so frustrated growing up politically in the Obama administration, was just like seeing how Obama would start from these like negotiating standpoints that were like 3 or 4 steps to the right of what most people wanted. And it was like, oh, well, you got to start with what, you got to meet people where they're at kind of attitude about politics. That is also like, no, we can't meet the Republicans where they're at, because where they're at is crazy. Where they're at is going towards genocide. But that's where we're at now. You know what I mean? Like, we met them. They're not we. The Democratic Party met them. The Democratic Party was willing to set aside the issue of Israel and Palestine and set aside any concerns about that, just so that they could get elected on the basis of maybe we can peel off enough of these centrist, rational people. I don't want to rehash the election anymore. And that's 100% why I'm starting this channel in general, is just like, I'm going to probably keep consuming a lot of Breadtube because that's who I am. I'm going to keep consuming the content just like you, but I just needed to get some things out. This is my time to do it. I'm at a better point than I've ever been in my life economically. I have the opportunity. So I want you to know that I care as much as you do, and I want to build a community around this. And maybe it's sort of like the community of people who are looking for community outside of the internet. So I want, however this is going to build out, if it does, I want it to become a space for us to kind of collaborate and figure out how we can organize people in our own communities, how we can get away from just, being an audience. And that's sort of what the left, I think, has become, is there's no longer this like membership based left. There's now this audience based left. You've got the Majority Report audience. You've got the David Dole audience with Rational National. You've got Matt Binder. You've got The Intercept. You've got all these different podcasts, all these different sort of areas, and they all do great work. They all talk about different things. The Intercept is another example, probably, of a podcast or series or what have you that is, in the vein of what I want to do. But even they, we'll talk about like what the Democrats are doing. And I just want this to be a space where it's like, we can be critical of Republicans and Democrats. We're not like Jimmy Dore, where we're like defending other imperialist nations. Like, I don't care what nation state you are. If you are trying to get an economic edge over someone else, or if like you're basically practicing capitalism, like, to me, there is a bit of a no true Scotsman, but there is a bit of this no true Scotsman defense that I think exists within the movement of like, we can't be too pure, but at the same time, it's like, if you're telling me that like Pol Pot and Einstein are on the same side because we can't kick either of them out of the socialist movement, then I don't think it's worth really having a movement. And I don't want to kick Einstein out. I want to kick Pol Pot out. You know what I mean? The bottom line is that socialism, I believe, and communism have been tried a lot. But if you're not a classless society, if you haven't figured out how to make the state wither away, and instead you've made the state grow larger, that's not what Marx and Engels and their forebears were talking about. This is not what they were looking for, and it's not what I'm looking for. I don't believe in authoritarianism. I don't believe in Russia being some sort of like anti-imperialist bulwark against the United States. But, I'm also not like super siding with the United States. I know that there's the Azov battalion in, Ukraine. Like there's contradictions everywhere. And so I think I just want to be able to stay on top of things. I want to be able to stay above everything I hear in a impartial kind of way. But I'm just letting you know, I do have a bit of a bias. I consider myself these days to be a bit of like a libertarian socialist. And what I mean by that is like libertarian in the sense that like government should be smaller, but not in the sense that there should not be a government. Like government on smaller scales, community-based organizing for aid, and I think it's fair to be that these days because we see places like North Korea where it's like, okay, so like there's a monarch kind of, and, everybody around him is eating well, but there's like an underclass. Like that's not communism. This sounds like some sort of like company turned into a monarchy. So anyway, we'll get there. We'll come around to a lot of different ideas, but I guess the too long didn't watch of this is I really don't think that it's going to happen overnight. And I'm not trying to prescribe or tell you to join a particular organization. I'm just saying like the left future I want to see is diverting from this sort of like, we're always talking about the Democratic Party and how they are combating what the Republican Party does. And we can maybe get to a point where we're talking about organizations outside of these things. Like what is the left doing to combat white supremacy rather than what is the left saying about what the Democrats will do kind of thing. And like I said, I'm not trying to say that organizing isn't happening. I just kind of like the YouTube channel Positive Leftist News. I kind of want this to be a space for bringing that to the fore. What else? Well, no one wants to work anymore, and I think that's sort of like the overarching goal of this podcast / video series / whatever the hell it's going to be is the overarching goal, I think, of this channel, these videos, what have you, is to sort of, for me, a therapeutic exercise of getting off my chest what I feel, but also maybe in the comments, if you tell me like, oh, this is what I'm doing in my hometown, this is how people from this area can get plugged into this regional resource or whatever. If anybody wants to tell me how big the DSA is these days, because I have no idea and I haven't heard much about what's going on in that organization lately, let me know. Like I know that there's people in these organizations that are doing great things, but I think we need to elevate this more. We need, the DSA is not a political party. The DSA is a organization. It's a membership organization, but you could be a member and not show up. And then, there's a lot to say about that. And I think people just need to show up. We need a left that is active and organized and organizing and thinking about the future and planning. A lot of what frustrated me about this previous election cycle is that people were so laser focused on election day that now here we are a few days before inauguration. And a lot of people are listless. They don't know what to do. They're looking at 2026 and 2028, even though those are years away. The focus is just gone. And I think we need to work together collectively as a left, as a Breadtube or whatever, to sort of bring it back to what it's supposed to be. I know it's going to be hard for people. One of the problems is that we have people in our lives who are avid Democrats who say, third parties will never be a thing. You should join the Democratic Party and organize. And I think we just need to be able to be prepared to say, like, either of these outcomes is equally improbable. We need to be able to come together and say that maybe we should be doing things differently. I think we should be able to look each other in the eye and say that and not chastise each other. I'm not here to chastise anybody about who they're voting for. I'm not here to chastise anybody about what they choose to put their energy in, except for if it's the energy they're putting into the Democratic Party, because like I said, man, they're chewing us up and they're spitting us out. That's what I'm saying. It's like, it's fucking Jover. We should be done with this party. And maybe we still have people in our movement who vote for the Democratic presidential candidate because it's the most viable. But I think that, for a good example, we should be starting off by saying, look, what are some of the weakest Democratic seats out there? And what working class neighborhoods are they running in that they're not doing well in? And we can think about ways to maybe win a seat or two in a state legislature or house. And maybe we could break up the supermajorities of either party such that we could create a coalition. Part of the power that Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema had is that they were centrists in a larger party. And that party had so little control over its bodies that they were then able to block votes entirely. I think that we need to have the opposite happen. I think we need to have a situation where, something happens in whatever state legislatively, and it's because, one or two leftists were able to cause the Democrats to caucus with them in order to make something good happen. And we gain power off of that. Anyway, all of this is just my sort of raw thinking, my raw thoughts. I guess you could say this is the first episode of No One Wants to Work Anymore. But not really. It's maybe my first thoughts. I don't know. But yeah, welcome to the channel. I've got a lot to say, and I had to get that off my chest. So peace out, I guess.